Part 179. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1786. Who can I ask? Who else can I ask for help? Philby turned her head sharply and stared at the teacher closely. Legend Langer was stunned for a moment, lowered his head and thought for a moment, then gave a wry smile. I asked Mr. Ripley for advice, but he didn't have any good ideas. To be precise, there is no way at all. After he sent the results of his research on the Zerg Core, His Excellency Jade Crown locked himself in the research room, struggling for 10 days and nights, and then gave him an answer. If you want to develop such a thing, you probably won't be able to do it within 20 years. Researched out here refers to the calculation of mature spell models, laboratory-scale technological processes, and small-scale production. If there is a sufficient research team, the 20 years may be shortened to 15 years. Of course I know he has no good solution, the Lord of Thunder said leisurely without moving his eyebrows. It involves greater computing power and a better tower spirit core. How could he not care? The strongest alchemist in the council. He had already asked. Ripley had told him long ago that there was no good way. Who else could you ask? Greet was also on the side, his mind racing. Before he could figure it out, the Lord of Thunder had already turned his head, and Ching Lingling's eyes turned around on him. Gretel slowly opened his eyes. The teacher's eyes instantly changed from expectation to contempt, as if to say, "Don't you dare be more stupid." "Oh, it's not me, I also feel that it shouldn't be me." "Then who is it? Is it someone related to me? Is it someone I know?" Greet thought hard under Langer's legendary hopeful gaze. He thought about all the legends he knew, from dragon legends to elf legends to the magician legends of the council, one by one. No one has this ability. Could it be that you want me to find the time dragon again? Then there will be heavy bleeding. It's not a matter of heavy bleeding. What I can give may be related to a certain important time point. I have already given it to my senior sister last time when she had an accident. If I ask for help with nothing, people may not treat me well. Stupid, the Lord of Thunder saw his eyes moving around, looking out and looking at the space bag, and he roughly knew what this young apprentice was thinking about. Unable to bear it any longer, I cursed first and then continued to stare at him. Think carefully. Think like a magician. What you know, what you understand, what you can find, think hard. What are you thinking about, teacher? Do I still have the ability to cross planes and bring a production line here? No. Bring a chip production factory here? Even if it is a chip production factory, it does not start from wafers. To produce wafers, it must be another factory. Also, why didn't you ask senior sister instead of just staring at me and asking? This is not fair. However, under the extremely oppressive gaze of the Lord of Thunder, Gretel could only rack his brains, and rack his brains again, wishing he could insert a needle into his spine and extract the cerebrospinal fluid. After thinking so hard, he actually came up with a way. Teacher. I remembered it. I think we can go to the earth element and ask. Earth element. Greet nodded vigorously. Everything is difficult at the beginning. Once you have a good beginning, the following words will become smoother. Shouldn't we ask the earth element about things like earth, stone, and crystal? They themselves should know how to make themselves. Anyway, there is an earth element who has a good relationship with me, so I can ask him to come out and ask. The Lord of Thunder smiled leisurely. Okay, this little guy finally started thinking like a magician. Although the earth element he called may not be willing to help him, and even if he is willing to help him, he may not be able to do it, but at least, you can ask for help. An earth element doesn't know how, it can ask the earth element elder, it can ask the earth element king. It is said that the earth elemental you know is willing to help you purify gems. Since he is willing to purify gems, it shouldn't be difficult to help you make some new gems. Legend Langer was drooling as he listened. To summon the earth element and seek help from the earth element, doesn't he know this method? Of course he knows. But first, he is not a conjuration specialist and can only summon earth elements, that's all. Second, even the conjuration magicians next door can summon earth elements, and they can even summon designated earth elements. However, there is no one who can use the earth element to help purify gemstones. It is impossible to purify gems, let alone help people grow crystals according to the specified element ratio and specified crystal form. This Nordmark mage is so unique. Envy is envy, complaints are complaints. Langer Legend can only ask Gretel for help. Fortunately, he himself is also a member of Gretel's Mage Tower, and there is no shame in bowing to the master of the Mage Tower. It took him half a day to explain the element ratios he measured, as well as the molecular structure and lattice morphology. This is the knowledge he has painstakingly researched. If he teaches it to others, it will have to be sold at a high price. But what about greed? Not only did he not mention the price, but he also had to do his best to ensure that Greed fully understood it without any deviation. He also had to be able to explain it clearly to the earth element in a simple and profound way so that the other party could understand it. After the explanation, he watched helplessly as Greed set up a magic circle and began to summon the earth element. Then, on the back of Gretel's hand, a mark that had never appeared before glowed with a dim yellow light. He still signed a contract with that earth element. I'm so lucky to be able to look at the earth element differently. Langer Legend tried his best to swallow a mouthful of sour vinegar and watched Gretel first give the earth element a few gems from his laboratory, and then bumped heads with the earth element and started gesticulating. The earth elemental was very happy to get the new gem. He happily listened to Gretel's request and nodded quickly. However, it didn't take long for the nod to turn into a shake of the head. Soon, as Gretel spoke more and more, the earth element shook his head more and more frequently. Finally, the yellow light on the body became weaker and weaker, and with a swish, the whole thing collapsed. What's the matter? I don't understand, please change. Gretel spread his hands half helplessly and half proudly. It said that this knowledge is very useful to them, very useful, but its level is too low and the others behind it can no longer understand it. It wants to go back to the group to have a chat and change their king. If it doesn't work, it will go up. So where did you end up? I just talked about the crystal lattice, talking about the crystallization of diamonds. It means that you can at least find a diamond earth element to listen. If you still don't understand, just change to other gems. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1787. From the round-headed, solid, and yellow earth element to the angular, dark, and radiant earth element, this one is probably made of obsidian. Obsidian Elemental walked out of the magic circle, bumped head to head with Gretel, and murmured for a long time. The colorful black on his body turned into lifeless black, and the lifeless black turned into a grayish black. When there were more and more grays in the black, it couldn't hold on any longer, and it collapsed again. This one won't work either. Gretel showed his hands to the teacher, as well as to his senior sister and Langer Legend. He said he would find a stronger earth element to come over. Ordinary earth element elite, earth element elder, earth element lord, earth element king. Legendary earth element, high-level legendary earth element. So when can they come? Have no idea. Gretel continued to spread his hands. Earth elements, their concept of time is different from humans. In other words, they have no human concept of time at all. You know, the Earth elemental plane is not like the main world where humans live. It has a planet and a star that revolves and rotates. The Earth elemental plane, according to the records of the Magic Council, is probably a dusty land. There is not much difference whether there is light or not. The regions are divided according to the type and density of the earth element. An earth element has to wriggle from one area to another, the speed is uncertain, and the time is uncertain. If they were to convene for a meeting, the time from when a certain earth element proposed the meeting to when a decision was made would range from a few days to hundreds of years. Gretel knows this, and several legends know it beyond recognition. The point is, the nature of the earth element is like this, and there is no use in urging Gretel. It's not like the electric elemental plane, with the speed of lightning and thousands of miles in an instant. Something happened, and it didn't take long for the entire plane to know. From this, if you want to catch a powerful electric element, you basically just need to make a fuss and then wait where you are. Unlike catching a powerful earth element, you need to work hard and run thousands of miles on the earth element plane. Of course, if you grab the earth element, you only need to face a few enemies at a time, unlike if you grab the electric element, you may have to face the entire plane. All in all, an earth elemental has to go back and tell its companions, and then ask a stronger earth elemental to come and help. Gretel can't urge it to go faster, the Lord of Thunder, the Legend of Langer, and everyone else can't urge it. It's a little faster. All they can do is wait and hope that Gretel's knowledge of the past is important enough to allow these slow earth elements to have more mobility and give them an answer sooner. Can you get through to that guy? Yes, but it said it has gone to find its companions. Can you contact it? Contacted and it said it was still on its way. You. Langer legend asked once on the third day and a second time on the seventh day. I was really embarrassed to ask again. In any case, Gretel is also the master of the Mage Tower. Gretel is helping him. Gretel doesn't owe him anything. Besides, when the earth element helps you to sharpen your craftsmanship, 1 or 2 years is really not a long time, and 10 or 8 years is not a short time. They have no "this matter is urgent, my friend is urging me, I want to hurry up" concept. Okay. Fortunately, this time, the earth element Gretel entrusted to them in a roundabout way did not keep them waiting for too long. Just half a month later, a signal came from the mark on the back of Greet's hand. Soon, 2 earth elements slowly emerged from the summoning circle. It was so dazzling and incomparable that Gretel just took one look at it and wanted to murmur, "A diamond is forever, a diamond will last forever." Alas, this earth elemental king is twice as tall as him. In terms of volume, it is probably 8 times his size. As for the weight, the density of diamond is 3.51 times that of water. In other words, this diamond earth element is a large diamond that is 28 times heavier. After seeing this, Gretel immediately called out to the tower spirit, raised his defense, and strictly controlled the entrance and exit of the Mage Tower. In particular, all dragons are warned and no dragons are allowed to enter the Mage Tower, not even the Time Dragon. But, fortunately Sarala is not here. Sarala is in deep sleep. A conservative estimate would be that it would take at least half a year to wake up again, otherwise he was really unsure whether Sarah would pounce on him and take a bite out. Fortunately, only one was a diamond earth elemental. The other one is similar to it in terms of clarity, but its refractive index is significantly different. It's basically a comparison of diamonds and zircons, or maybe diamonds and glass. This is the diamond earth element, and this is, according to our words, the quartz earth element. Gretel muttered with them, communicated for a long time, stood up and introduced to the legends. They are very interested in the crystal structure of gems and are willing to communicate with us. Maybe they can help a little bit. Whether the earth element could help, Legend Langer didn't know, but in the current situation, it was true that he himself couldn't help. He could only stand not too far away, watching Gretel explain for a while, wave a light curtain for a while, and have someone drag out a microscope to show the earth elements the crystal lattice state illuminated by a strong electric field. He can actually help with this, at least he can help power the microscope. After struggling with the boss for a long time, when he felt that he was sweating profusely and was about to lose his patience, he looked forward to the stars, the moon, and finally Gretel waved the light curtain and began to explain the crystal structure of the Zerg core to the earth elements. They said it was too difficult and they still didn't quite understand it. I asked if there was any real object that they could eat. If they eat it, they will have a clearer understanding of this crystal. No. No. Lord of Thunder and Legend of Langer were both denied. Greed pouted, wiped his sweat, squatted back again, and communicated with the earth elements. That's probably it. Mix it evenly. Yes, the more even the better. How to do it? I don't know how to do it. If I knew, I wouldn't come to you. Hey, this must depend on you. Please, please. The earth element held its head, buzzing, and constantly emitting low-frequency vibrations. After a long while, Gretel jumped up. The last step. Legend of Langer, get the elements quickly. What elements did you prepare? Hurry. Legend Langer woke up from a dream and quickly handed over 2 small boxes. Gretel almost grabbed it and stuffed it into the quartz earth element's hand. Okay. That's it, please. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1788. The quartz earth element fell silent. Not only is it silent, it also seems to be falling down. Greed noticed that as soon as the minerals in the 2 boxes entered the hands of the quartz earth element, its hands, or arms, softened a bit. It softens, changes from transparent to opaque, and swallows the minerals in bit by bit. Then, the hand remained motionless on the outside, but began to rotate, tumble, and stir inside. It looks like a flask where the solution begins to boil and is stirred, or the solution naturally rises and falls during an exothermic reaction. As for how to precipitate the silicon element from the silica using this kind of stirring, and then evenly mix the boron element and other unknown elements into the silicon element, this. Gretel had no idea and could only let the quartz earth element play freely. After all, he is a legendary earth element, and a high-level legendary earth element. Maybe, probably, he can do it, right? Gretel stared at the quartz earth element for a long time, but still couldn't figure it out. I turned around and looked at the diamond earth element next to me. I was actually happy to see this. The diamond earth element is changing color. At first it was a clear and transparent colorless large diamond, and gradually it was dyed a little bit of light pink, then a little bit of light pink, and then a little bit of light pink. The pink color became darker and darker, and finally, one of the feet of the diamond earth element turned into a large crimson diamond. It's just that the redness is not very uniform, one is darker in the east and lighter in the west, like a piece of dyed cloth, or like a wall that has been splashed with a bucket of paint, and wisps of it are flowing down. If you cut it into pieces and separate the different shades of colors, you can make many different jewelry. However, these shades of red are mixed together, which is very ugly. Just as Gretel was about to complain, he saw that the other foot of the diamond earth elemental was dyed a very light blue. Then from light blue, to pink blue, to sky blue, to sea blue. Are you studying ion homogenization? Greed was stunned. Judging from the way you are dyeing layer by layer, it seems that mixing these ions is still a bit difficult for you, and it is not something you can easily do. Huh. Why is the other arm turning green again? Diamond Earth Elemental is very interested in the new game he found. Its whole body, limbs, head, left and right shoulders, chest, and back all began to change color in sequence. Turn red, turn yellow, turn green, turn blue. Before long, it dyed itself into a large colorful diamond. The complex colors and weird combinations make people want to cover their eyes after just one glance. It's so ugly. It's so challenging to one's aesthetic sense. Although we can't require earth elements to have human aesthetics, but can we make the color evener? Or, can each dyed color patch be concentrated in a small corner so as not to spread all over the body? The diamond earth elemental himself didn't feel anything. It tossed itself for a while, swaying its body closer to the quartz earth element, and the two heads touched each other. Buzz buzz, buzz buzz, a very low and penetrating vibration was transmitted from the diamond earth element to the quartz earth element. The vibration was not strong, but Gretel felt a little dizzy, nauseous, and wanted to vomit just by standing on the edge. He hurriedly set up a vacuum barrier, but it still didn't work. Then he set up a thin electromagnetic barrier, but it still didn't work. He had to throw himself a small flying technique and let himself fly 2 centimeters above the ground. Looking left and right, the teacher, Legend of Langer, and senior sister Philby, at some point, had already lifted their feet off the ground and were hanging in the air. "Why don't you remind me?" Gretel complained. After he finished complaining, he knew that he was already level 18 and was no longer a child who needed to be taken care of all the time. In the teacher's opinion, he could deal with such small things by himself and protect himself. What? Can't react to this? If you can't react, just stay close to me. You can't die anyway. Gretel pursed his lips and had no choice but to divert his attention and continue to wait for the results of the earth elements. After a long time, the diamond earth element swayed its body and walked in front of Gretel. "Dear magician, the knowledge you shared with us is very important to us, very, very important. You are our good friend, we will repay your friendship." Thank God, the communication between earth elements and humans is still relatively normal, and it is not like the magic sound piercing the brain. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief. "I also do it for mutual benefit. So, when can we get the crystal we need?" "It will take some time, your request is very difficult, too difficult, too difficult, we have to go back slowly." The diamond earth elemental tilted his head, as if he was trying to think of words. It seemed that human language was a bit difficult for him, so that the yellow on his head deepened one layer, and then another layer, and soon turned into a golden color. "Study slowly," Gretel quickly prompted him. The diamond earth elemental slowly shook his head for a while, and finally spoke out. "Slowly raise one. My friend, what else do you need? I will give you everything I can give you. Keep. Do you want to raise a new earth element and let it grow in the form of wafers and crystal pillars from the beginning?" Gretel was shocked. The diamond earth element has begun to urge. "So my friend, what do you need?" "We need the crystal pillars I mentioned, as many crystal pillars as possible." Gretel took a deep breath and said loudly. The diamond earth elemental helplessly spread its hands. "This is not enough, friend, this is not enough to repay your friendship. Let's do this." He suddenly shrugged. He shrugged his shoulders, and the head on his shoulders, or rather, the large dark yellow diamond with a slightly oval shape, rolled down with a snap and hit the ground. Gretel hurriedly spread a soft force field on the ground to prevent the diamond from being smashed or damaged. "Just finished, light green and dark green left arm, orange right arm, purple shoulder, red left foot, blue right foot." Crash, 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 piece by piece disintegrated and collapsed. In the end, only a small, clear, and transparent colorless core was left of the huge diamond earth element that was 2 people tall, floating in the magic circle. "Dear friends, I know that our bodies are very precious to you. This body is given to you, don't worry, I will go back and I will have another body soon. It is not difficult. As for the crystal core you want, wait, give us some time." Gretel. Is this called committing yourself to someone without repaying it? This is really a promise with one's body. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1789. Wow, diamonds all over the place. There are diamonds as big as 4 people. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, thick and light, all different colors, but they are all clear, transparent and extremely pure diamonds. There is a rich magical atmosphere, and no matter where you put it, there is no problem with the diamond used as the core gem of magic equipment. Legend Langer stared at the diamond in that place, clenched his fists, and tried not to make a sound. As a legend of the alchemy system, his net worth is quite rich. However, he had never seen such a large and high-clarity diamond in his life. Regardless of the price plummet caused by large-scale shipments, these diamonds are several times his current net worth. A young magician of level 18, a magician who has never put much thought into making money and is not the best at making money. How can he be so rich? Also, a lot of the knowledge you taught the earth element, especially the knowledge about crystal lattice structure, was researched by me. Langer Legend tried his best to restrain himself from thinking wildly. It is not difficult to research some knowledge, but it is very difficult to gain the trust of the earth elements and gain their favor. If it were him, could he impart all this knowledge that was important to the earth elements openly and without asking for anything? Legend Langer asked himself, he probably couldn't do it. But if it cannot be done, it is impossible to establish such a relationship with the earth element and make a diamond earth element willingly give up its body. So, forget it, if it's not yours, it's not yours. Don't think too much. Philby clenched her hands tightly, her fingertips trembling slightly. Even if you don't have a special love for jewelry on a daily basis, it's a little hard to control yourself when you see all kinds of diamonds in this place. Hold it, this is my junior brother's and it has nothing to do with her. She can't ask for it, otherwise it would be too disgraceful. Even the corners of the Thunder Lord's eyes twitched twice before regaining their composure. Just after he calmed down, a wisp of thin space blades flew out from Gretel's fingertips, waving them vertically and horizontally, cutting off all kinds of diamonds. Those who see it have a share, and those who see it have a share, he smiled sweetly, and the sweetness was 3 plus signs, even for a young man. He picked up the diamonds and stuffed a large handful into the Lord of Thunder's hand, and then stuffed a large handful into Senior Sister Philby's hand. Teacher, take it back and make some jewelry for your master's wife. Consider me a filial piety to my master's wife Senior Sister, you can use these diamonds to make jewelry or magic equipment, whatever you want. Is this going to be given out? Not to mention that they are Gretel's teacher and senior sister. Teachers and senior sisters don't stuff money so casually. They already have their own mage tower, and their finances have long been independent. Legend Langer's eyes were a little straightened, and he was so envious that he wanted to say to Gretel on the spot, do you think it's too late for me to switch to Thunderhorn now? Unexpectedly, before he had time to look down, Gretel had turned around and put another handful of diamonds into his hand. Your Excellency, a large part of the knowledge I imparted to the earth element is the result of your research. Greet looked directly at him with bright eyes and spoke sincerely. So, some of these diamonds should belong to you. Of course, these earth elements are my connections, the mage tower is my mage tower, and I also want to leave a share for Cyril. He pursed his lips and smiled, his smile bright and lively, but also a little shy. In this way, I will take half of these diamonds. The mage tower will keep a quarter as research funds, and the remaining quarter will be divided equally between you, the teacher, and the senior sister. Of course, these diamonds need to be cut, polished, and carved, so that's all up to you. Is it too late for me to switch to the plastic energy system now? Is it still too late? Your Mightiness. The legend of Langer was really overwhelmed by Gretel's heroic means of distributing wealth. 1/12 of a diamond, that's equal to. It's equal to more than 2 people's weight in diamonds. So many diamonds, so many rare-colored diamonds dropped from the legendary Diamond Lord, are they enough for him to advance from the first level of legend to the second level of legend? Sure enough, there are benefits to hugging the boss's thigh. Look, there is no shortage of resources. Don't worry. Whatever you want to cut, how to polish and carve, leave it all to me. I promise to be on call and polish it as you need. Also, as long as you need the core of the Mage Tower in the future, I will cover it. Never charge money. Okay then. Gretel smiled. Then let's take the first step and cut these diamonds according to different colors and different shades first. After the cutting is completed, we need to distribute it or put it into storage before we can continue. Good. It's not me who did it anyway. For simple cutting or something like that, my high-level mages are enough. Reading gems and cutting gems are the entry-level skills of an alchemist. By the way, you have to watch them and not steal anything. You are not allowed to steal the fragments. With Greet spending a lot of money, the follow-up work progressed quickly. In 3 days, only 3 days, the diamond blocks of various colors have been cut up and neatly stacked on the table. Take a quarter of the Mage Tower and store it in the warehouse. The Lord of Thunder, the Legend of Philby, and the Legend of Langer each receive 1/12. There was also half, and Greet picked off 1/10 of it as the start-up capital for the construction of the hospital. It's true that the hospital is a gold-swallowing beast, but you can't throw out too many diamonds at once, otherwise it will have no meaning other than pulling down the market. He got a bunch of floating saucers to put the rest in, raised his feet high and stepped lightly, and walked into the top floor of the Mage Tower. Sarala was still sleeping in a ball, and the ice mist around her became thicker, rippling gently with her breathing. Greet stood on tiptoes, tried hard to take a look, and then looked again. Well, the deep sleep has not ended yet, and there are no signs of progress. The hill made of monsters around me was missing a piece. I probably got up once in a daze, took a few bites, and then fell back to sleep. The ice mist around me has grown in size, but I can't tell whether the silver dragon inside has also grown in size. The gold coins outside the ice mist showed signs of wear and tear, and the fragments next to them were no longer so shiny. At this time, new and beautiful jewelry arrives. Will she be happy when she sees it when she wakes up? You will definitely be happy, right? Greet carefully put down the newly acquired diamond. Well, this may be the direction of the head, place a bunch. This may be the direction of the tail. Sarala likes to roll around and make a bunch of them when she is asleep. Here, in the opposite direction, put another pile. Ah, there are still so few diamonds on hand. It's not even enough to circle around Sarala. Even if she turned into a human form, it wouldn't be enough to swing around. In the silver dragon state, these diamonds were piled into a pile, just enough to make a pillow for her. Alas, I have to continue to think of ways to find money. It's so hard for me. It's so hard for me to raise a silver dragon. It would be great if the research results come out as soon as possible. If that doesn't work, I might as well build the tower spirit core that the teacher wants as soon as possible. Mage Nordmark. The summoning array of the earth element has changed again. Thanks to Etzinglenhaken for the 500 starting coin reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1790. The Diamond Earth Elemental didn't come this time, a huge disappointment for Legend of Wrangle. However, the Quartz Earth Element is still here. After a large lump of translucent quartz emerged, a small object slowly appeared in the center of the magic circle. It was very small, only a little higher than the Quartz Earth Element's feet. It staggered out, stumbled, and bumped into Gretel's leg. The top of its head could not even reach Gretel's knees. Gretel bent down and picked it up. This Drago is our new tribesman. The quartz earth element leaned forward beside him. A huge lump of quartz rested on two slightly smaller lumps of quartz and tipped forward, teetering on the edge of collapse. Thank you, Master Nordmark. The knowledge you provided has given us a new kind of tribe and provided new vitality to our earth elemental world. The quartz earth element raised a big arm and touched the little guy. He grew up little by little according to your requirements. Come on, Drago, let this magician test your body. Gretel. What are these words? This is. Testing your body doesn't sound so weird to me. In the end, under Gretel's desperate struggle, the little earth element Drago was not dragged away for direct testing. Gretel was worried that if Legend Langer and Sister Filby were allowed to pass the electricity back and forth several times, the little earth element Drago could be put to death. The earth element was killed directly. This is a single seedling. It is a brand new earth elemental race that has been recently developed, or cultivated, or whatever it is. If he were beaten to death, that would be too sinful and wasteful. All in all, after repeated communication, the little earth element Drago raised a round arm, held his breath, concentrated, and then, pop, the arm fell directly. Gretel quickly picked up the small ball of arms and gave it to Langer Legend, asking him to try to electrify it, try to engrave it with mental power, and try various methods to test it. He held the little earth elemental Drago in his arms and fed him a piece of magic crystal. At the same time, he looked left and right, up and down, wishing he could take a photo with him. Wafer. A crystal pillar that can cut out wafers. Monocrystalline silicon that can be used to make chips. Live. A creature that can move, has self-awareness, can eat, sleep, and jump. Sure enough, the magical world has its own methods. In the previous life, when making wafers, we made a pot of purified monocrystalline silicon and then found a way to crystallize it. The magic world tells the earth element you can grow like this, and then the earth element itself grows. It's grown, it's grown, it's grown. To crystallize this thing, there is no wisdom to guide it, so we have to go through a lot of calculations and set strict physical and chemical conditions to let the crystal pillars grow naturally. But with the guidance of wisdom, we can make an agreement with a new earth element to let it grow like this. At least, the question why does this crystal stop growing will not exist. As long as the earth element is willing to grow, then it will definitely grow. Greet rolled up the small round earth element in his hand and was filled with emotion. On the other side, Langer Legend held the arm that fell off the earth element and hurried into the laboratory. Turn on the optical microscope. Turn on the microscope. Test the uniformity of the crystal. Power UPS. Test each item in order. Under the command of the legendary mage, the entire laboratory was busy in a hurry, but in an orderly manner, like a machine with precisely meshed gears. Greet held the little earth element up and down, fed 2 pieces of magic crystal, and then 2 large pieces of quartz. Seeing the crystal earth element Drago slowly grow an arm, Lang Legend of Gear ran out. The test results are out. How about it? It's still not good. Langer Legend wanted to communicate directly with the small earth element, but at the end of the day, he also communicated with the quartz earth element. However, he tried twice, but the other party didn't listen to him, so he had to hand over all the data to Greet, who gave the lecture. The crystal structure is not very uniform. You see, here, here, here and here are all crooked, here is too dense, and here is too sparse. The purity of silicon is not high enough. I hope it can be purer. We randomly tested a piece, and silica was detected here, here, and here. The boron element is not mixed evenly, so the conductivity is not very good. You see, this piece is too conductive, and this piece is completely non-conductive, which is not the semiconductor we need. It's best to modify the shape of the crystal so that it can be placed perfectly into the center of the mage tower and not be wasted. The quartz earth element listened very carefully and attentively. Inside his arms, The semi-molten transparent material was tumbling up and down, constantly refracting various flashes of light. For a long time, he took the little earth element Drago and held him in his arms, and the two communicated for a long time. What did he say? Legend Langer asked Gretel in a nervous voice. Greet shook his head, squatted in front of the quartz earth element, and listened to their communication with all his attention. After a while, Drago was lowered to the ground and piled in a heap dejectedly, about to melt, while the quartz earth elemental turned to Gretel, gesticulating and shouting. He said that Drago is still young, has poor control, and is not good looking. Gretel listened for a long time, and the more he listened, the more he frowned. If you want to grow crystal pillars that fully meet our requirements, you must at least be at the legendary level. Legend? That won't work, Langer. Legend jumped up on the spot. Legends can be found but not sought. Even if I am willing to spend resources, I can't just rely on them. SHH. Gretel whispered to silence him and waved his hand. I told him the same thing. He said that he must at least reach the stage of an earth element elder. In short, we need to give him more resources and raise him quickly. Resources, resources, all in all, resources. Legend Langer looked sad and moved out a lot of magic crystals, a lot of various ores and gems. For the earth element to grow, first, it needs energy, second, it needs to see various similar structures. The former relies on magic crystals, and the latter relies on ores and gems. If you have resources, you can grow faster. If you don't have resources, your growth rate is basically up to chance. The two earth elements sank into the magic circle and disappeared. Even the good thing of leaving my body to you was gone. Legend Langer was dejected, went back and hugged the new crystal, and continued to test repeatedly. Alas, how long does it take for a newborn earth element to grow into an earth element elite and an earth element elder? Is 1 year enough? Is 10 years enough? Speaking of which, would you like to help him speed up his growth? Gretel stared thoughtfully at the crystal column on the experimental table. The legend of Langer suddenly turned around. How to help? You, research on how to use this thing? Whether it is directly polished or sliced into pieces, you can make a brand new and usable thing. Of course, you can also try to directly use the constructing spirit enlightenment technique to activate it. Spirit. Then what? If it succeeds, the earth element will be able to get part of the world's feedback. With the world's feedback, do you need to worry about the growth rate? It's the end of the month. Please vote. If there are more than 1,000 votes, for every 1,000 more votes, there will be 2 additional chapters next month. Everyone vote for cats. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1791. Make something slightly more usable, get feedback from the world, let the raw material suppliers grow up quickly, make something more usable, continue to get feedback from the world. The logic of this cycle is smooth, and the actual effect is, God knows how many actual effects it has. There are too many uncontrollable parts. Along the way, Langer's legend has enjoyed the benefits of the world's gifts not once or twice, but he knows that this thing is too erratic. Sometimes you feel that you have made great achievements, but it never comes. Sometimes, you feel that you just touched an insignificant little discovery, but it comes with a bang, forcing you to rise to a higher level. Class. Fortunately, waiting for feedback from the illusory world does not delay work. Legend Langer held the small crystal pillar, his brows were twisted into knots, and he went to work honestly. Break down, break down, break down the crystal pillars into tiny, tiny pieces. It's as big as a finger, as big as a fingernail. Then, under a microscope, under a microelectron microscope, or directly using mental power, carve something deadly on it. Carve a magic circle. Carve various magic circles. The one he had researched before was somewhat similar to a magic circle, but not the same, a magic circle based on the properties of semiconductors. Fortunately, even though the crystal pillar grew unevenly and had various defects, after being divided into small pieces, it was still usable. Langer Legend racked his brains to carve various magic circles on it, and then inserted it into a special testing device for testing. The alchemy branch produces various kinds of golems on a daily basis. Golems with high intelligence and golems with low intelligence all need to be driven by the wisdom core. Their testing of the wisdom core can be said to be very mature. Simple level action command test successful. Simple level action command test successful. Intermediate action command test successful. Intermediate action order test failed. Intermediate action command test successful. Legend Langer sat in the research room, silent, just looking at the light screen projected by the tower spirit. The light screen was divided into left and right halves. The left half was filled with data brushed down like a waterfall, showing the details of every action of the demon. The right half slowly swelled, slowly simmered, and it took a long time to drop a line of words, which is the final result of each test. The more Legend Langer looked at it, the more he frowned, and the more he looked at it, the more helpless he became. Finally, he let out a long sigh. Well. How? Greed watched curiously as the golem in the test field was topsy-turvy. He took 2 steps and fell down and got up again. He got up, took 2 steps, turned around and continued to fall, but he didn't care about the chip. High expectations for usability. It's just a newly invented thing. It's good if it can be used. No one expects it to have supercomputing power immediately. Besides, the performance of this golem is much better than that of the earliest bipedal stepping robots. At least it can walk, but its running is not stable. As for evolving into the latest version of the Boston Company's robot, which can turn on the spot and jump 720 degrees, that is of course still early. However, wasn't it only a day since this chip was invented? Its computing power is very poor, it is not as good as ordinary mid-level demon puppets, and it is even worse among low-level demon puppets. Langer Legend sighed. Is this the wrong road? That's right. It must be right. Gretel leaned forward and grabbed Langer's legendary hand, his eyes bright. Absolutely nothing wrong. But you have to give it time. Any kind of invention, when it first comes out, is always weak, imperfect, and useless. You have to modify it more and debug it more. But it's too weak. If you're weak, just improve. If you're weak, just keep trying. Gretel grabbed his hand and shook it. Improve the structure. Improve the algorithm. Make it carry more things. We have time. We have enough time. The Dragon Clan's war will not be completed in 10 or 8 years, and it may not be completed in 100 years. Legend Langer slowly closed his eyes. After a long while, he took a long breath, turned to Gretel, and forced a smile. I'm sorry, I lost my temper. I have put too much expectations into this project. I hope I can see the results soon. I also hope it can become the cornerstone of my advancement. Then work harder. Don't worry, I can provide all the resources for this project. That large piece of diamonds, as an investment in this project, is quite generous. Legend Langer nodded vigorously and plunged into the research room. His hair was messy, his beard was messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. The reason for this error, the crystal lattice is uneven and the energy is broken when it reaches this point. If it is broken, it will be impossible to execute the order. The reason for this error, the semiconductor suddenly conducts electricity here, and the energy goes astray. The reason for this error, when the energy flowed through, it was too hot and burned. The reason for this error, the energy went astray. Ah, there are so many problems to be solved. When it comes to these issues, Gretel can't help. Even though the legend of Langer came up with a strange programming language, which was very different from the programming language in his previous life, he completely ignored it and immersed himself in his work. Dragon eggs. Dragon eggs. The genes of the dragon clan. Chromosome analysis of dragons. The dragon chromosomes are strengthened. Dragon eggs hatch. Write a paper, write a paper, write a paper, write a paper. Gretel held his head and sighed. Ever since the ray-enhancing magic was researched, his research progress has stalled. The result is that his current paper cannot even be published by the magazine Life. Where can I get the paper from? Where can I get strong enough papers to fill this journal? What's the matter, Greet? A gust of breeze blew. Phil by Legend strode in, picked up the draft on the table and glanced at it. Why are you dazed? There is no more paper. Phil by laughed. Greet knocked his head on the table. In recent times, they have published quite a lot of papers, but they lack one important paper. The results of Langer's legendary semiconductor have not yet been produced, and the natural order has been stuck on biological modification. Philby's smile grew wider. She raised her hand and rubbed the hair on Gretel's head vigorously. Okay, senior sister will help you. But just this one, it's time to manage your most fundamental field well. What do you want to do with life? Gretel sat upright suddenly. That makes sense. I want to become famous as Life in order to promote my medical theory so that I can build more hospitals. Therefore, there are no new projects recently. I am just going back to writing medical books to prepare for building a hospital. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1792. The magicians were surprised to find Mage Nordmark's time in the Mage Tower was shortened. The time given to the magicians to answer questions, the time given to them to plan research directions, the time given to them to mediate resource allocation, all have been reduced. Get up every morning and take a look at all the processes, approve the ones that should be approved, and walk around a few key projects before he runs away. You also need to practice your mental strength, and you also need to practice your magic. The meteor burst has not yet reached the point where you can rub diamonds with your hands. Then he didn't come back. He just went to the nature order next door. He went to argue with those nature priests about how to raise monsters, how to hatch dragon eggs, and more importantly, which hospital to use. That hospital was established by Gretel shortly after arriving on Dragon Island. The original intention was just to find something to do for himself, and at the same time, to provide care for the dragon relatives and various humanoid creatures in the surrounding territories when they were sick. The place. Later, as Gretel carried out the dragon reproductive project and built the Mage Tower, the hospital was moved from Sarala's brother's territory to Sarala's father's territory and was built next to the Mage Tower. After the arrival of a large number of people from Nevis, Greet naturally handed over the management of the hospital to his disciple, Leon Carlos. This hospital is occasionally responsible for the treatment of mages, such as those with headaches, brain fever, sneezing and coughing, back pain and foot pain. Most of the time, it is still responsible for the treatment of surrounding humanoid creatures. As for the reputation of the hospital, it has indeed been established. Those who come here to seek medical treatment are tribal lords from as far away as thousands of miles away, spanning 2 dragon clan territories. Greet admired the patient's ability to endure while dragging his sick body so far without trains, planes, or any modern means of transportation. Under such circumstances, the number of disease sources in the hospital is not too many, but it is definitely not too few. And Leon has lived up to Gretel's expectations. In the management of the hospital and the continuous treatment of humanoid creatures, his abilities and levels have steadily improved. Well done, Leon. Greet's expectation for Leon Carlos was just to manage the hospital well so that there would be no hospital infection incidents or bad medical accidents. However, it's clear that Leon Carlos has exceeded his expectations. This necromancer, who has grown into a young man, has personally explored, treated, and dissected hundreds of humanoid creatures, the vast majority of which were level 2 to 5 professionals. This experience is something that most healers, and even most necromancers, cannot have, and in the process, he formed an extremely clear concept. The difference between humanoids and humans is not that big, and there is no gap like a chasm. Of course, there is no reproductive isolation between some humanoid creatures and humans, and they are completely capable of producing offspring. Even if some humanoid creatures cannot produce offspring with humans due to their size, their body structures and the way their bodies operate still have a lot in common. Based on this, he has made great progress in learning necromancy. Currently, he has advanced to level 12. With some breakthrough results, he will be able to reach level 13. After Greet took over, he sorted out the treatment cases accumulated by Leon Carlos and quickly pointed him in a new direction. You start a new project and test the chromosomes of these humanoid creatures to find what they have in common. Compare their chromosomes with human chromosomes, which can deepen your understanding of chromosomes and understand the role of each chromosome point and chromosome segment. Yes, teacher. Leon Carlos saluted and ran away. Gretel looked at his back and smiled slightly. Over the years, Leon Carlos has performed more than 100 operations, most of which were successful. The few that failed basically did not die on the operating table or cause any disability to the patient. Of course, this is because high-level healers are behind the battle and throwing healing spells at any time, but it also includes his understanding of the structure of the human body, which has reached a very in-depth level and can cope with the structure of the human body of different humanoid creatures. Let's go back and ask Leon Carlos to write a book detailed explanation of the body structure of humanoid creatures to summarize his achievements in the past few years. It just so happens that it can also fill in the journal life. Greet swayed and continued walking along the hospital corridor. Although this hospital is very simple and has very few patients, the nurses basically just grab a few random humanoid races for training, but the equipment is really very advanced. CT machines with the highest resolution, nuclear magnetic resonance equipment with the highest resolution, X-ray machines using legendary equipment as light sources, microscopes, electron microscopes, and genetic analysis devices. Instruments for sectioning, embedding, freezing, and analysis. As long as he could think of any equipment that might be helpful in diagnosis and treatment, he had it in the Mage Tower, so he decisively provided a set for the hospital. When I go back to Nevis, these high-end equipment, as well as the Mage Tower responsible for operation and calculation, will be dismantled and taken away. Seriously, can I start writing about the guidance of CT and MRI on diagnosis and treatment? Manual. Greet pondered slowly. In addition to diagnosis and treatment methods, we should also try to write a hospital management manual so that it can be distributed to branch hospitals in various places for hospital managers to follow and implement. Although there will be spellcasters, priests, and healers from various sources in the hospital, good management is more important for the treatment and recovery of patients. For example, hospital feelings and the like can be basically contained using non-magical means, but the current magical methods are not very professional. While I was thinking this, there was a sudden roar from the front. Greet walked over quickly and raised his head, raised his head, raised his head. He saw a skinny, black-faced giant more than 5 meters tall, quarreling with a magician. The magician stood on tiptoes on the railing on the second floor, trying hard to be eye level with him, and hung up a loudspeaker for himself. I told you this is cancer. It has metastasized. It has metastasized in many places. In your intestines. In your liver. In your lungs. In your bones. It's all metastasized. I can't cure it with my current methods. If you want to cure it, yes, you need to use the limited wishing technique. The specially developed directional limited wishing technique is twice as expensive as the standard limited wishing technique. If you want treatment, just pay. I think you are a half-legendary warrior, so you won't be able to afford the money. You can do surgery without the limited wishing technique. We will try our best to clean up the tumor. However, the damage will be great. It will be easy to relapse. You choose. Gretel sighed softly. The 8-ring limited wish-making spell, the directional version, costs twice as much, which is not expensive. But, how many people can afford it? In the entire kingdom, in the entire Nevis mage group, how many people can afford it? Is there any cheaper way that can at least help them prolong their lives and provide better treatment? Please give me a monthly ticket. Give me at least 3,000 votes this month. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1793. If he only used magic means, Gretel could now cure many diseases. From genetic changes caused by high-intensity radiation to infertility symptoms among legends. All kinds of headaches, fever, colds and fevers, bacterial infections, viral infections. If it doesn't work, just use the great healing technique. If that doesn't work, just use the limited wish technique. If it doesn't work, just do cloning, and then transplant the liver when it's time, transplant the liver when it's time to transplant, transplant the kidney when it's time to transplant. Well, it's not like the heart can't be transplanted either. However, if you want to open the hospital to other cities around Nevis, to the royal capital, to various counties, or even to small cities like Heartland City, you cannot keep using these high-level spells to conquer the world. In a county, the highest level magician may only be level 12 or 3, and generally will not exceed level 15. Moreover, most of them are the ones with the strongest attack power. If someone specializes in healing, then there is a high probability that they are priests from various temples. Their research on magic, ahem. Therefore, what Greet currently wants to do is to lower the threshold for various treatment methods, lower it, and lower it again. Just like the current tumor with multiple metastases, this magician of the conjuration system can only perform limited wishes. Gretel watched the dispute between the two sides quietly for a while, then made a gesture to have the patient taken away to rest for the time being. He sent an invisible servant, called the healing mage of the conjuration system, and asked softly. Haven't you learned about the targeted killing of cancer cells that I announced before? Learned. The white-robed healing mage's face instantly turned bitter. Who cannot read the research results of Master Nordmark, especially his research results in the direction of healing? Who cannot learn? Those who follow the path of orthodox healing techniques don't have to learn them. A healing mage like him who traveled thousands of miles to Dragon Island would be stupid if he didn't understand and thoroughly learn every healing technique from Master Nordmark. So, do you have any difficulties in using the directional killing technique? Greet asked in as soft a voice as possible. He doesn't want to speculate maliciously on others first, for example, asking the patient to pay a huge sum of money, and if he can't pay, he won't be given treatment. Anyway, there are only two people now, behind closed doors, he can ask slowly. What is the reason that makes you neither use the relatively simple directional killing technique nor call a superior doctor who is proficient in this spell for consultation, but directly ask the patient to pay the huge fee for the limited wishing technique? There are many difficulties. The white-robed mage's face fell even further. Before Greet could ask further questions, he had already gushed in an almost crying manner. I have only met 4 such patients so far. 4. The first one vomited blood profusely on the spot. I threw 3 of them in a row to treat serious injuries before pulling him back. The second one did not vomit blood, but he coughed up blood and almost choked himself to death. After treating the serious injury, I suctioned the sputum. After suctioning the phlegm, he continued to cough up blood, and then treated the serious injury. This went back and forth for several cycles. The third one, thank God, finally did not vomit or cough up blood, but on the second and third days, in short, he had a high fever for several days, which could not be brought down even by removing the disease. The fourth one, everything is normal, but he relapses. He relapsed. He came back to me in half a year and he relapsed. I swear, I really cleaned him up. Gretel. Greet really felt sorry for him. What a sin, that's really what I said, seeking the psychological shadow of the other party's therapist. He didn't even have to think twice to figure out what happened to the unlucky therapist. The first one is probably esophageal cancer or gastric cancer, where the tumor has invaded blood vessels. Once the targeted killing of cancer cells is done, the tumor is gone and the blood vessels are broken immediately. Judging from the aura of vomiting blood, it seems that the big blood vessels were broken. Fortunately, my professional counterpart in treating serious injuries was able to barely seal the blood vessels and bring the person back. The second one, should it be lung cancer? Moreover, the tumor was very large and had invaded the blood vessels. As soon as the targeted killing procedure was performed, he coughed up blood on the spot. This is even worse. Even if the fragile blood vessels are blocked, there is a high probability that the blood vessels will be broken during the process of sucking out the congestion, causing new bleeding. There is nothing to say about the third one, high fever caused by tumor absorption. He remembered that in his paper on targeted tumor killing, he had already written about possible situations that he might encounter, but saw it and actually saw it were different after all. The fourth one, TISC, it really was transferred, right? No lymphatic cleansing? Or, after the tumor was sampled, sectioned, and targeted, several nearby lymph nodes were not taken to look for new cancer cells? All in all, if he encountered so many unfortunate things, he would definitely not want to perform this kind of surgery again. He would refuse to do anything, and would also persuade all the doctors he knew to stay away from this thing. As for the patient who cannot afford the limited wish-making technique and has no choice but to die, so what? Anyway, there is nothing I can do, and there is nothing this hospital can do anyway. If you are not willing to do so, you can transfer to another hospital or go to a higher-level hospital. But in this world, my place is the highest-level hospital. There is no greater healer than me. Greet sighed, then took a long breath in and a long breath out. Under the somewhat horrified gaze of the white-robed therapist in front of him, he said seriously, "It's my fault. I didn't teach you in detail and let you fumble around with a paper, so you encountered so many problems. Come, call all the therapists who are free, and I'll start from the beginning." Tell it again. Let's start with the shape and location of the tumor. In fact, Greet is really not familiar with cancer. It is a standard chronic disease, whether it is left to the oncology department, respiratory surgery, gastrointestinal surgery, or various departments. In short, it has nothing to do with the emergency department. Even if a patient comes in who has massive tumor bleeding, malignant hyperthermia, or is left breathless for various reasons, after the emergency department drags the patient out of hell, he must be transferred to the corresponding department. However, he is the only time traveler in this world, or in other words, he is the only time traveler in the medical field. He can only talk about it based on the introduction to oncology he read in his previous life and combine it with his own medical experience. After talking about the occurrence mechanism, formation, evolution, and invasion of tumors, we will talk about the pathological diagnosis, imaging diagnosis, and various diagnostic methods of tumors. After explaining everything, he rolled up his sleeves and led the therapists to examine the patients one by one. Ultrasound, CT, NMR, puncture biopsy, Okay, I'll do it again for you to see and tell you what you need to be careful about. If you have any patience in the future, call me and I'll watch you do it. It's the last day and a half. Last day and a half. Everyone works hard to vote for me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1794. 5 conjuration therapists, 10 nature priests, and 5 necromancers stood in 2 long rows next to the patient. Gretel had to be grateful that the patient was a giant, more than 5 meters tall, who could allow 20 healers to stand shoulder to shoulder in 2 rows, 1 row alongside him and 1 row opposite him. If you are an ordinary person, you will have to sit 3 rows in front and 3 rows in the back. The front row will bend a little and the back row will try to stand on tiptoe. Therefore, when a teacher leads a class, or a senior director makes rounds and gives lectures, he or she usually leads only 7 or 8 students at most. If there are too many, the teaching effect will be poor. Of course, this time, or considering that everyone is a spellcaster, maybe the first row stands on the ground, the second row stands taller on floating saucers, and the third row floats to the ceiling. Gretel smiled at his imagination. Turning his head and scanning around, there were 3 arcane eyes flying above his head. It was certain that his current lecture should have been recorded and could be replayed at any time. Tisk, don't be like this. Each of the 3 groups of people records a copy. Do you want to hide it later and watch it within your own faction and never share it with others? Gretel didn't want to spend the energy to ask these questions at the moment, so he just raised his hand and unfolded a screen of light. In the light curtain, a specific and subtle giant suddenly appeared, standing in the center of the room. The giant man with a sallow face, skin, and bones, and dying on the treatment bed was startled, and he squirmed back 2 steps on his elbows. The black and white one with no face, you can see the giant in his belly at a glance, his legs are spread apart, almost stepping on his belly. It's okay, this is just an image. Gretel waved his hand to the frost giant Gutierrez and threw a soothing spell to make him no longer panic. Then, he dispersed the lower body of the light curtain, lowered the upper body a little, and zoomed in, zoomed in, zoomed in. Look, everyone, this is a magnetic resonance image, and this is an image of rotating detection magic. From these 2 images, we can see that there is an obvious tumor in the patient's colon. The size of the tumor in the liver has reached 135-38 mm, fortunately, it is a giant. If it were a human, this size would have exceeded the liver. More importantly, we must pay attention to the relationship between tumors and blood vessels. The liver is an organ with extremely rich blood vessels. Let's adjust its display method and mark the blood vessels. While adjusting, he took a slight breath of cold air, and then praised the conjuration therapist who did not dare to directly use the tumor-killing technique. You see, this tumor has invaded the portal vein of the liver. It can be said that there is only a very, very thin layer between it and the portal vein. The blood vessels invaded by the tumor are particularly fragile, and the blood vessels are basically pressed by the tumor. Once the tumor is removed, it will immediately spurt out blood. You are right not to dare to do this to this patient. If you do it, he will immediately bleed heavily and you will really be unable to recover. The face of the white-robed mage who first received the patient turned from red to green, from green to white, and then slowly returned to normal color. Greet nodded to him encouragingly. Let's look at the lungs. There are also large tumors in the lungs, and they have also invaded the blood vessels. If this tumor is removed, the lungs will immediately bleed, and within a minute, the amount of bleeding will fill the entire lung. What will happen? The half-step legendary frost giant lying on the bed couldn't bear it anymore and struggled to sit up for the second time. Gretel threw him another soothing spell, and at the same time, Two powerful magician hands flew out and pressed down on his shoulders. It will suffocate to death. The patient is equivalent to drowning in his own blood. Then, I won't treat you. The frost giant's face was pale and pale. It is unimaginable that a patient whose face has turned black and yellow to this point can still look pale. Greet shook her head at him placatingly. The reason I show you this is to remind you that when performing surgery, you must carefully understand the image and be prepared for backup. For example, when removing a liver tumor, you have to be very careful and perform the surgery bit by bit. When you get close to the blood vessels, throw the treatment on it as soon as possible. Anivia, what do you want to say? Anivia had already raised her hands high. Greet nodded to her, so the young natural priest leaned slightly and raised his voice. I want to say, can we directly open the chest and abdomen, and then release the tumor cell killing method under direct vision? After all, many people may not be able to do it by looking at the image and relying on imagination to position. Greet couldn't help but smile. Indeed, the trauma of such an operation is indeed much greater. Compared with looking at the image and throwing spells directly, the damage to the human body is much greater. However, it makes the surgery less difficult. Great reduction. It can be said that the learning curve of surgery has changed from an extremely steep curve that ascends like a rocket to a very gentle and leisurely upward curve. If we use climbing Mount Tai to describe it, the former is the tight 18 pan and the slow 18 pan in front of the Nantian Gate, while the latter is almost the section of the mountain just after stepping through the Red Gate of Mount Tai. This is a good idea. Greet nodded in approval. Moreover, if there are invaded blood vessels, you can also use hemostats to block the blood vessels first, and then remove the tumor. This can greatly reduce the risk of major bleeding. Of course, understanding of the human body structure and surgical proficiency are very demanding. Teacher, I have another idea. Leon Carlos also raised his hand. Gret nodded for him to speak. The young necromancer squeezed forward a little and spoke in a rapid voice. I have discovered before that the reason why cancer cell killing techniques often fail is because we don't know which cells to kill. Cancer cells grow differently in different places. If we perform direct surgery, can we first take some cells and look at them under a microscope? Very good. Very good, Gretel praised repeatedly. A big difficulty in tumor resection is how much to remove. If you cut too little, it will not be cut cleanly. If you cut too much, normal organs and tissues will be damaged too much. 1 point more, 1 point less, tests the doctor's experience and vision, and is related to the patient's recovery and long-term survival chances. If you look at it under a microscope and then use cancer cell killing techniques, you can accurately kill the cancer cells on the organ surface. All the bad ones will be removed, and none of the good ones will be left intact. Of course, even if this is the case, you healers must memorize the appearance of cancer cells. You can't stop memorizing it just because you can see it live. The patient is lying there with his stomach disemboweled, and every extra minute, a little more risk. Can I not have surgery? The frost giant Gutierrez trembled. Gretel turned her face and smiled gently at him. I suggest you do it. I will do it for you personally, without charging you, as a teaching surgery for them to see. Don't worry, I have cured someone who was in a worse condition than you. After he recovered, he has now advanced. A legend. Thanks to Ed for the 500 starting coins. Please give me a monthly ticket. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1795. The frost giant continued to tremble. Eviscerate, disembowel, cut liver, lungs, intestines, and bones. Make an incision, block the blood flow, dig out a piece, slice it on the spot to see the cells, and cast a spell on the spot. When these healers talked about the treatment methods, they simply regarded him as a wild sheep. No, the wild sheep didn't even count, they just treated him as a piece of meat. How to cut, how to divide, how to dissect the liver, how to cut the intestines, this is a knife on him. Why don't you say it so coldly and heartlessly? Gretel didn't force him either. Doctors will never force patients to accept treatment or anything like that. That is not called medical treatment, it is called human experimentation. Besides, the one with the highest level in his hospital is Elder Knox, a half-step legend, followed by him at level 18. The strength of one's muscles and bones is not what it takes. If he and Elder Knox were together, they might not be able to knock down a half-step legend of the warrior type on the spot, beat him with a sap, and tie him to the operating table. So Greet winked at Anavia and asked her to ask Gideon, a legendary warrior who had received treatment, to talk to Gutierrez. Anyway, your life is yours, and so is your pain. With terminal cancer and multiple metastases, the kind of pain in Greet's previous life would have probably required the highest grade painkillers. One option is to close your eyes, lie down on the operating table and be manipulated for a while. In the end, you may have the hope of advancing to legend. At worst, you can relieve the pain and extend your life. In the worst case, you can at least die a clean death. The other option is to live with a serious illness for months, years, or decades. The half-step legend has a strong vitality and may be able to survive for more than 10 years. However, tossing and turning with severe pain every day, the quality of life is absolutely terrible. Gretel believes he can make the right choice, huh? As for the healers, Greet took them next door and continued his lecture. For this patient, it was previously determined that he had metastasis in the liver, colon, lungs, and bones, which was correct. However, the judgment was not accurate, there were still many places that were missed and not found. It's not enough to just cut off all the parts found out before. Look carefully, here we see unevenly enhanced tumors, here we see obvious osteoporosis, here we see swollen lymph nodes, here. On the entire image, metastases can be seen in the left hilus, right lung, mediastinum, right axillary lymph node, cervical lymph node, para-aortic lymph node, liver, intestine, lumbar vertebrae, bilateral pelvis, and femur. These are CT and MRI images. They need to be studied, analyzed, and compared bit by bit to find the location of the tumor. If PET-CT is used, there will be dense black spots all over the body, big and small. It's shocking to see at a glance. It's a pity that there is no PET-CT here. There was no positron scanning machine, no equipment to receive the scan signal and calculate the image to give it, no fluorodeoxyglucose to inject. By the way, what is fluorodeoxyglucose? How to make it? For people in this world, is the difference between their tumors and normal tissues also the difference in glucose uptake and metabolism? By the way, the positron has not yet been discovered in this world, and Greet himself will definitely not be able to discover the positron. He can count on his teachers or senior sisters to do it. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 100 years, he can complete this task. Discover. Gretel had no choice but to cross out the PET-CT direction. Anyway, the targeted killing of cancer cells should be of great use. At worst, after the operation is completed, he will be cleaned from top to bottom. What he needs to study now are other issues, such as: everyone, tell me, is there any way to keep a half-step legend under anesthesia from beginning to end during the operation? Being awake and aware during the operation is not a good thing. Let alone jumping up and hitting people, it should be it's troublesome enough. The entire conference room looked at each other. After a long time, Elder Knox, who had the highest rank and received the most attention, asked cautiously: Mage Nordmark, haven't you ever healed before? I used to be a legendary spellcaster. It should be said that it was the legendary elf elder who helped me anesthetize me, Gretel answered unhappily. Elder Fahim helped treat Idian and the high-level monsters in the elf forest. On Yangju Island, he treats the eldest prince, who has been sleeping in the Emerald Dream all year round, When treating others, he is basically assisted by the elf elders, and he is only responsible for the most critical core part. Anyway, now, the tranquility technique he learned from the God of War temple is used on the half-step legendary warrior. It is not to say that it is completely useless, but he can only control the opponent for less than 10 seconds. Gretel called Bernard over and tried it on him. Well, the answer is terrible. Without attacking, such as scratching with a knife or pricking with a needle, the tranquility spell can last for about a minute. Once an attack is carried out, Bernard wakes up in 5 seconds at the fastest, and wakes up in 10 seconds at the slowest. 10 seconds is enough. The skin is not even opened yet. This kind of problem cannot be solved by Gretel alone, it requires everyone's collective efforts. Elder Nox provided various methods they used when treating high-level warriors. The healing mages provided their methods of relieving pain and pain for high-level patients, as well as methods of controlling them and making them unconscious during battle. The necromancers provided their own methods of controlling their opponents, and even methods of vivisection, at the risk of being hated or even beaten by Gretel. After everyone's discussion, communication, and experiments, thanks to the Mage Tower for accumulating a large number of high-level monsters due to past experiments, everyone finally solved the problem of anesthetizing high-level warriors. Then, the 5-meter-tall giant's heartbeat, blood pressure, respiratory rate, single breath volume, required oxygen uptake, all the same information were collected. And Udian also successfully convinced Gutierrez. You see, I had lost hope before, so I planned to give it a last try and rush into the elven secret realm as far as I could, burying my 200 pounds in it. As a result, Master Nordmark helped me after some treatment. At that time, I was also like you now, on my body, here, 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 here. He quickly clicked a dozen points up and down. These places hurt. Master Nordmark said that I have tumors in these places, look at me now. Legend. If he hadn't helped me cure it, how could I be where I am now? The cured person stood in front of him alive, with pain in his chest, stomach, and bones all over his body, tossing and turning every day. The frost giant finally made up his mind. Give it a try. If you fail, you'll die happily. By the way, if I really die, can you give my tribe some compensation? Asking for a monthly ticket. Asking for the last monthly ticket this month. Remember to keep the guaranteed monthly pass for the cat next month too.